welcome to episode 71 of the Endless Backlog podcast, your number one amateur hour podcast, as told and hosted by me, your host, Gagan. That was redundant. Joining me today is Benjamin Minkoff.
Good to be back.
Christopher Compton.
Here we go, boys.
You want to know why I keep trying to mess with the intro instead of just going with the one I go with every time? By the way, I hope all is well where you are. For some reason, as told by Gagan Singh, doesn't seem to work as well to me. Makes me feel like I'm like a bard, and this isn't exactly a bard's tale or anything over here, you know?
Welcome to the Endless Backlog podcast.
Right? Ooh, maybe I should open that way, huh? Okay, whatever.
It's told by me, the bard, Gagan Singh.
Yeah. I've been behaving. Last week's podcast is already on iTunes and YouTube, so I just need to do the quick things on the website as we're recording this. So we're back onto some sort of a pattern. I think I'm gonna finally get back to. We got to do these on Tuesday nights. Nights I'm gonna try to get you on. We'll do at 9 p.m. Nights when I'm like, we can roll without Ben. So be like, come on, let's do this at like 6, or 7. Beauty of this week is that while we're recording, nothing relevant happened news-wise. Smash Brothers gained 2 new characters in the chick from the new Fire Emblem game and Bayonetta. I think it's
Bayonetta. That's pretty dope.
Bayonetta looks overpowered.
I bet the character for Fire Emblem is like male or female, like Robin.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I don't know. I'm just making that up.
Yeah. No. I thought it wasn't a Robin this time. I think it was like a full-on.
Oh, it's more like the
own character now. Yeah. Like if I wanted to make a McDucky swag in Fire Emblem, I can. Yeah. So.
But yeah, Bayonetta looks awesome.
And overpowered.
That witch time looks really amazing.
Yeah.
Which probably means pretty hard time.
Yeah.
Could be some bat within shit.
Yeah. Looking good. The other big news, or it's more like rumor this week, is that Rise of the Tomb Raider's PC version will release in January.
That would be quick.
That would be really quick. That would make you wonder exactly what the fuck did Microsoft pay for exclusivity.
For the holiday season.
I mean, I guess, but, whatever. Let's not make this about... We don't have to talk about business today. We could talk about games. Let's
just talk about games.
Yeah, games we've been playing.
You guys know what the news is. You're informed, intelligent people who are wonderful and awesome.
Yeah. Plus, by the time we post these, the news isn't news anymore.
Yeah, it's like old. It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
That was terrible. Stop.
So, we've listened to your cries that you never communicate with us. But we can hear.
Yeah.
We're talking about games.
Anyway, Chris, you've been on the Rare Replay run. In theory, you might finish this game this year.
No.
In theory.
No.
Well, you say no, but you seem to be making a good run at it, man.
I am more than halfway through, but no.
So what does more than halfway through mean?
Yeah.
So there's 30 games in this collection, and I'm like 20 games in.
Yeah,
19,
so
20,
getting pretty well,
but they're getting bigger is the problem.
That's the problem, yeah. If anything, the first 10 might take as long as the first 20. I mean, the last 10 might take as long as the first 20.
Yeah. Like, some of the... Depending on how good you get at the 80s and early 90s stuff, you can beat that in an hour or two. But Jet Force Gemini, the one I have most recently completed, requires you to find all of the secrets to even get the ending of the game. So that took 20 hours.
What do you think of Jet Force Gemini? It's been a while since I played that game. I remember having fun with that multiplayer.
Yes, multiplayer was awesome, and it's still in the game for the Rare Replay, which is cool. Jet Force Gemini was actually one of my little hidden gems that I vividly remember playing on the N64. So when I went back to it, I remembered the first couple levels very, very well, like just reflex memory.
Right.
The locations, like the forest, where it looks like you're just in really tall grass, and that you're just really small, and you're fighting these ant drones that have captured these tribal people, and the basic goal of the game is to save and rescue all these tribal people, but the problem is that you can kill them, too, in the crossfire. And if you kill them, you basically have to restart the level. And also the cool thing is, it's kind of, you can pick which of the 3 protagonists you want to play as. There's the guy, Juno, who later on, he's the one who can, like, walk on fire. There's Vela, who can swim. And then there's the dog, who he has a little rocket power underneath him, so he can kind of platform a little bit. But I didn't remember getting much past the first couple levels, and now I remember why. Not only is that game pretty hard in spots, but yeah, there's just so many secrets to unlock and collect that I today had to use GameFAQs to get to the end of that game.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is and that's sort of the rare design, is they made a lot of collectathons in that era, which...
Yeah. Like Banjo, I beat before Jet Force Gemini, and also to get to the end of that game, you basically have to collect everything too.
Yeah. And
So-
did you feel like you needed a guide for that game, or...
No, Banjo I didn't need a guide for.
Do you do both Banjos yet, or just the first one?
Banjo 2E comes after Perfect Dark, which is what I'm
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the shooting in Jet Force Gemini?
Shooting is pretty simplistic. It's basically you can just like shoot wildly without really aiming, but that doesn't work out, especially if you're trying to keep those tribals alive. So you basically have to go into this. It's like third person, but you see through your character to just the ridicule on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's all like it's not on rails at all, but that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Early days of third-person action.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And it basically comes down to shoot things in the head, which is always satisfying when the drones' heads pop off and bounce around the screen. And there's an achievement for collecting like 300 of the heads.
It's always been weird to me that Microsoft hasn't been able to find any way to maybe bring this IP back in a weird way, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's so many cool like huge weapon variety, lots of, for especially a game on the N64, the amount of levels and secrets, like secret levels piled on top of secret levels is pretty astounding.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like an untapped IP.
Yeah. It seems like one of those things where like they could have made the game out of this. Like the game that this could have been, but the technology wasn't there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does seem like a game that is a little hampered and hamstrung by N64 era graphics and controls.
More
Maybe
so
fix
controls.
the art direction a bit.
What was
Yeah,
wrong
there's definitely some blocky shit. Like Banjo, I never had problem with the art direction in Banjo, and that
Okay.
game's old.
what's wrong with the art direction in Jet Force Gemini?
Some things are just a little difficult to understand. Like, what is part... I mean, there's this level, it's like the second or third level, where you have to shoot like these panels on the wall,
Right.
and you wouldn't even really know that they're part of the environment or something physically... Because it looks like it's a part of...
I mean, I was just thinking, I know they say don't judge a game by its box cover, but like, they're kind of realistic people-ish. It's like sort of realistic, but not really, and it looks, for the characters, and they look pretty freakish.
The characters, actually, yeah, the characters you play are the most jarring aspect, because the drones all have a similar design. The tribals fit in with that, but the actual Jet Force Gemini, the crew, they are the most out of place thing.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is a great box art. Look at this right over here. Look at this.
No, I like
do that with the post.
They're just they look really out of place.
An all new interstellar adventure from Rare.
Like the dog doesn't look too out of place, but the guy in like Juno and Bella do.
Yeah. It
Dogs.
makes me think it's like a teammate to Buck Bumble. Oh man, I wish Buck Bumble was part of that project, but Rare didn't make that game.
And holy fuck, the last boss in that game is tough.
Yeah, man. 90s era games, man.
That fucking last.
You're about
boss
to get into now you're about to get into generations when games became more polished, I guess is the wrong word. Accessible, easier, less rigid in certain ways.
Well, Banjo was never hard. The last boss is a little tricky just because the flight controls aren't great. But I never, I think, was that the first game? Banjo was the first game where I didn't get frustrated. Because even in Blast Corps, as much as I love that game's hard.
Yeah, well, Blast Corps does not fuck around.
Yeah. I got frustrated.
Were there any other interesting mechanics? Let me go back to the part where you say, except you can shoot, the people you need to save. Do you sort of miss that type of stuff in games? I feel like
that you can fail so badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not if if developers are looking for a way to extend their games, don't add padding.
Mm-hmm.
Just add ways to fail, like legitimately fail.
Yeah.
And you have to not just run in like a crazy person and just throw your biggest weapons and grenades all over the place. You actually have to use a little bit of strategy. And the only problem with the collectathon of the tribals, it does come down to the fact that you can't access the end of that game without finding. And some of them are in the most remote locations. I would never have guessed that as a kid, let alone as an adult.
Yeah. It's a little too completionist friendly.
Yeah, no,
it's
for
like,
sure.
It's for some of us, it gets to a point where it's like it just creates this bloat of game design. It's not interesting or compelling, and
like if I just have to play through DK64.
Oh man, that DK64 is so good. I love the game. Yeah,
I wish
it's a really good game, but there's a lot of bloat in that game.
Yeah.
Do you have to get all the golden bananas to fight King K. Rool?
I don't think you have to get all of them.
I don't think you have to get all of them, but there's specific things you have to get that may... First of all, just beating certain levels required you to find so many bananas in an area.
Right.
You need to get a lot of bananas to unlock the boss for each level.
That's the same as Banjo. You need to collect the musical notes.
Yeah, but like there was a lot of bananas. Like,
and they're like 100 for each character in each level.
Yeah. There was
I think there are
like
5 golden... How many? There's a bunch of gold bananas for each character in each level.
You have to beat original Donkey Kong and one other thing. Oh wait, Donkey Kong 64 is not in that package.
No.
Yeah, it's on that package. Is what I'm saying. It's gonna save them some time.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong 64 is not in the package. Donkey Kong Country is not in the package.
Well, obviously.
GoldenEye is not in the package.
That one's also.
I mean, Perfect Dark is basically GoldenEye anyway.
Yeah. Plenty would argue it's the better game.
So far that I've been playing it, it's definitely... I mean, it's the remaster, so it's a little unfair.
Yeah, to be fair, the remaster only fixes the controls. And fixing the controls, I would say, is using those terms loosely, the controls are still pretty bad.
I haven't found much problem with them yet.
Yeah, whatever.
You have to play on harder difficulties, though. That game is easy.
Yeah. But, I don't know. What else did you play besides Jet Force Gemini? I believe last time we checked in, we did not ask about Banjo-Kazooie.
I don't think... Have we done Blast Corps, even?
We did Blast Corps, because that was one of those games I remember talking about Blast Corps.
I beat Banjo, beat Jet Force Gemini, and I'm like halfway through Perfect Dark.
Hey, what did you think of Banjo overall?
Love Banjo. Best game in the collection so far, even better than Blast Corps.
Do you remember a game called Super Mario 64?
I do vaguely remember.
Did you ever beat Super Mario 64?
Like, I want to say yes, but I probably didn't.
I was going to be the prick and say, like, all right, Chris, moment of truth here. It's a better game, Banjo or Super Mario 64?
I'm sure it's Super Mario 64, but Banjo's the one that's obviously most
obviously
right now.
You know.
Banjo still holds up, though.
Yeah, no, those of the type of games that held up from that era, some of the 3D platformers are still awesome. Mario 64, to me, whatever. You'll find certain things about the level design to be dull, but first of all, it helps that Mario went backwards mechanically, technically speaking, right? So it adds to Mario 64's excellence.
Right.
But in the case of Banjo, they just don't make that type of game anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. I like how all the levels are so completely separate from one another.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my favorite level is that I think it's it's like Click Clock Tower or something like that.
Right.
Basically, it's one of the later levels in which it's the same level 4 times through the 4 seasons, and things you do in one season like carry over to the next season. So at one point you help this beaver break a rock, but there's no water, so you can't swim. He's like, come to my home, but you can't go up into his home because it's too steep. So you have to wait until summer. You go to the summer version and the waters come up, and then you can swim up into his cave, and he gives you a golden jiggy, which is pretty dope.
That's pretty rad. It's using the day-night stuff in a cool way, as opposed to open world games. All right, it's nighttime now. Nothing really changed in the world. Somehow the same people are still at the fast food joints in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
As they were earlier in the game.
It's like, shouldn't you guys be closed? It's 2 in the morning.
You think games will finally start doing that? Maybe adding something? Because Bethesda's games sort of do that.
Yeah, I thought that's what Bethesda's games try and do.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own routines.
Yeah. The Witcher 1 does that. Witcher 2 and 3 do a lot of that.
Witcher 1 definitely did it.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more like binary, I guess.
Yeah.
Like really obvious when things.
Yeah. That's sort of how that was their parlor trick. Was that?
Yeah, that was the parlor trick for sure.
But like it adds. Sometimes the parlor trick adds to the experience and the atmosphere. But you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Witcher 3 will say certain characters are only available at certain times, which makes sense, because if you're doing a stealth mission, do it at night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Broad fucking daylight.
Yeah. Rare replay, so good.
It is a lot of game.
I'm right in the middle of the golden era. Unfortunately, that means it's going to come to an end, and then if they dive off a cliff real fast.
Yeah, you got to do the grab by the ghoulies phase. But I stand by that nuts and bolts is awesome.
And you got Viva Pinata waiting for you at the end of the rainbow.
He's beaten Viva Pinata.
I've already beaten Viva Pinata. Like, because I'll just load them up and it will remember my save files, I guess. And just like...
Yeah. Chris and I are the staunchest defenders of Viva Pinata's excellence on this podcast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
Those games are awesome.
I'm excited. Those are the two games that I'm excited to play that I never played is Cameo. I've always been interested in Cameo, never played it. Mm-hmm. And Nuts and Bolts is the other one.
Yeah. I'm super happy that if Yooka-Laylee does well, that we'll start getting a string of these rare type games.
Yeah.
Because it's just gotta happen. I feel like there's this hole in my heart now of, I was saying this in a thread about, I forgot what game we were talking about. I was like, listen, I miss swinging chandelier platforming segments, alright? All of a sudden, like, I miss that stupid thing we did in video games. It's like, man, every game we're making these days basically sort of plays the same, a little too much. You know, and whatever, that was our big complaint back then. It's like, oh, look, it's another swinging chandelier thing, or collect this or that. But it's like, you know, there was more color to those games is one thing, right? Like, they were vibrant. And just, you know, the games came up with unique mechanics for combat, it's felt like, right? Like Cameo, you turn into different things. Yeah. Jet Force Gemini, you had the shooting, and then Banjo, similar type of collectathon, but it's a platformer. You know what I mean?
Oh man, Rare has variety for days. It's insane. I went from Blast Corps, which is some weird driving destruction hybrid game, to Jet Force Gemini, a shooter, to Banjo-Kazooie platformer, to Perfect Dark, a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Just
when you think of these games, were these games like really the AAA games of their time, or were they more like Nintendo published middle tier stuff?
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Because you can ask a lot of people who missed a lot of these games.
Yeah, because
like I know people that are really into video games who know Banjo, but they've never played Banjo.
Yeah. Well, cause the way I would look at it, I was like, there's no way you could argue that Perfect Dark didn't have the production budget for its time, right? Like, clearly there was some money spent by Nintendo on that one. But some of the other N64 games, you go, that was Rare on a budget, but they did something cool and creative with it.
Yeah, which is on more Jet Force.
Yeah.
I can see Jet Force being under that.
What a crazy era that was. Ben, what were you going to say?
I forgot.
Still excited for Conquer. It's coming.
Conquer's so cool, though. You think the jokes are going to land, though?
We'll see. Yeah. Maybe it will go from being funny topical to, like, funny, I can't believe they thought that was funny. Yeah. Or kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought we were going to make our own Conquer in Project Spark.
Yeah, fuck you.
Oh my god. Yeah. That's the worst.
Why would you do this? Why would you bring that up? Anyway. I hope the success of Rare Replay and hopefully Sea of Thieves is good, and then, like I said, Yooka-Laylee comes out and it's awesome because
Rare just makes a huge comeback.
Yeah, Rare makes a comeback, where just that style of game finds a market again. Because I'm saying there's this middle tier happening in PC game development, and right now it's satisfying all the people that are nostalgic for those PC games of those era, right? Especially the Infinity Engine RPGs, or like you get something really weird like Kerbal Space Program, right? But I want some games to speak to my nostalgia as well, you know? Like, I want a game that makes me think of Blast Corps, and I want someone to say I was inspired by Buck Bumble. I want that guy's game.
Never gonna happen.
Buck Bumble is
Those days are coming.
Buck Bumble is a terrible game, but Buck Bumble's theme song is so fucking awesome. I'm humoring the idea of buying that and making that.
Composer was inspired by Buck Bumble's theme song.
Yes, that's what I need in my life. That's what I really need. Anyway, let's move on from Chris. You haven't played anything else since?
No, I've just been playing Halo 5.
Yeah. Anything notable happened in Halo 5 since we've stopped?
No, I think they've just been adding a bunch of new armor.
Yeah.
Nothing new.
Still a good multiplayer game.
Still so fun.
Yeah.
So fun. They actually, one thing they did do that which I thought was cool, they give you a Warzone requisition pack if you win a Warzone game. Because that was one of my big complaints with Warzone, is you were always like bleeding rec cards.
Yeah.
Just to play that game. So now that's kind of offset it a little bit.
It helps. That seems like a smart addition that should have been there for a while. I get what you're saying, because like you would say, like, if you play a string of matches, then you feel like you have to go play some other mode because you're not equipped for Warzone now that you don't have your rec cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's good. That's a good addition. Good for 3 for 3. They're still calling it the sustain period. Do you think Halo 5 is sustaining so far? Or?
I think people are definitely... the only backlash that happened with that game was the campaign, which is whatever. But it seems that the community is really digging the multiplayer, and I think people are sticking around. Because of all of the updates they're giving it, I think it will have much better legs than a Halo 4, for example.
Yeah, I recall Halo 4 had a real problem holding players.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It got pretty... It's a freaking pick on Google that Halo 4 got pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, Forge is around the corner, so that helps that game. So moving on to...
That'd be nice.
So, as I said, we're quickly getting closer and closer to Game of the Year. I've already told Phil and actually I thought I told you guys as well. I might be wrong. But I told them that the podcast recording date, I'm aiming for January 10th. Right? Just because that gives us a few days. That gives us a whole week and a half after the New Year. Right? And I don't want to do it like New Year's weekend because I figure people got things to do. So. But, for the most part, it's a Sunday. I'm willing to not watch a football game or put it on in the background to get this podcast done. The point is, this gives us a whole month to play games and just get ready for Game of the Year season. There's certain games that at this point are completely off the table as far as I'm concerned for my needs. I'm not going to play Xenoblade. It's just not happening.
I will.
That game is way too long for me to be prepared. Because I still have to do The Witcher 3, and it became a matter of priority. It's like, The Witcher 3 I have to beat because of the status that Chris has it on, and because I know Phil likes it enough, and in theory Matthew might join us on that podcast, right?
Right. Yeah, like even if Xenoblade, I might make a push for it because I will be playing it before we do that podcast, but Witcher 3 we're talking possibly top 2.
Yeah. So like the games that I feel like are high priority that really had to get talked about, like I have to get Soma in because Joseph's so high on that game. I'm not going to get Pillars in, but whatever, that's fine. Ben, however, is getting our smaller stuff out of the way, which is really important.
Thank God.
Yeah, I kept finding indie PC games to play.
Good, because I hate to break it to people, but I really do believe that when we start making some harsher cuts during this thing, it's going to be a lot of this indie PC stuff that's going to be like, no, I want that there, because...
And it's going to be up to you, Ben.
Yeah.
Stop us.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot of...
Probably
it's
gonna
going to have to
cut
fill
Ori
in
on
less
line
things that
first.
get cut.
Yeah, Chris and Phil are basically relying on you to argue against me that, for instance, in top 10 this year that does not have Ori and the Blind Forest is ridiculous.
So I just recently beat Ori.
And the Blind Forest.
And the Blind Forest.
But did
I
you
beat
beat
both of
Ori
them.
and the Bling Forest?
I didn't unlock that, unfortunately, because it's kind of dumb. In Ori, if there are parts of the map you don't explore, you can't get back to them for certain areas.
Okay.
and so I can't 100% the game, I think.
Okay. That
which makes me sad.
Weird, but okay.
But I mean, it's a Metroidvania. I don't know, like that's kind of my first impulse. Is like, it's a really beautiful game.
Mm-hmm.
The story is not too complicated, but is sometimes handled in a nice way. But I mean, really, it's you explore and you find things and you get new powers and then you explore some more.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad we're getting to a point where we're getting so reductive of video games.
Yeah.
You explore stuff and jump.
Mm-hmm.
You explore stuff and jump. Combat is pretty straightforward. I like kind of how you can set the save points, but really, like, after I beat it, I stopped playing it, and I don't feel like I'm going to think about it too much more.
Damn.
Like, and it sounds harsh.
That seems to be pretty harsh, considering, you know...
I don't think... It's not a bad game. No, I enjoyed my time with it.
It's not bad. Yeah. Let me get this out of the way. It's not so much that Ori's... Let's go out of the way. I think anyone that's going to play is automatically going to say it's a good game. I don't think that's in question. The thing is, Ori's been talked about for a lot of people like it's this great game. Like, even people on our forum, for instance. Mooksy loves the shit out of that game. Illmatic loves the shit out of that game. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, we were the type that really dug Super Meat Boy. And it was one of those games where, like, no, there wasn't a story to it, but it stuck with us months after months because it was, like, years after years after. It's sort of been, like, our benchmark for indie platformers, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it's because that game just plays so beautiful because, like, I mean, that's what it is. It has some of the sharpest controls you'll see. So I ask, you didn't feel that way about Ori's gameplay?
I feel like Ori controls pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time,
and
I like the way it feels, and I think one of the best things about it is kind of as the power set opens up, you're moving back through when you're backtracking and stuff. Like you find new ways to move through the same areas that like, oh, I can suddenly skip all this stuff because I have this power that I didn't have before. That even if I'm not like taking a shortcut, I can pass across the same space so much more quickly. And that's a nice feeling. But I guess part of it is I don't feel like the game, it doesn't like push the limits of the moveset the way,
Super
I mean, it's not Super Meat Boy. It's a different kind of game.
Yeah. But what
Super
you're
Meat Boy
saying
is
is
built
you
to
feel
challenge
like,
you.
you're saying Ori doesn't challenge you the same way?
Yeah, like the combat, the whole thing is like you get close to an enemy, you mash the X button and avoid their attacks, and then eventually they fall over and die.
Right.
And that's most of the combat. So that's not very challenging. The boss fights, as a result, aren't particularly challenging.
But it's a platformer, isn't it?
And then the platforming sections, there's kind of a limit to how bad it can be because you can kind of save at any point where you're on solid ground.
Right, but it's like based on... So
like there's an energy section. There's energy, but
so
I was very limited by that.
Let me explain that mechanic. Quick save has been a thing in video games, and I think Ori actually does a unique thing in that it has a quick save mechanic. I mean that in a very direct way. Mechanic in that there's a specific meter or like energy bar that dictates how often you can create quick save points, right? So
and you have to find things to replenish it.
Yeah, and that energy bar still plays into the other elements of the game, right? Like the tricks you can do, the powers you have. So like the more daring of players will say, I'll go start to finish in this long area because I rely on my moves a little bit more. In other cases, you're going to be like, that was a really hard jump. I'm saving right the fuck now so I don't have to do that again.
Right. And for me, it was like, at first I did that, and like there are a few like energy doors you come across where it's like, you need to spend 4 points of energy to get through this door.
Right.
So it's like you have to get from a point where you've replenished your energy and do this whole section without dying or saving, and then you can unlock something. Which is cool, except after a few hours, I had like 8 or 9 pieces of energy, and
you didn't give a fuck.
And I didn't give a fuck anymore.
Right.
And that I felt like that's sort of what happened. It's like...
Once the novelty wore off, it became a mechanic.
I got past the curve of the game, it sort of felt like. And then it wasn't as challenging. I mean, it was still really pretty. It was nice finding new environments. There are some interesting puzzles.
Yeah,
Some of the flinging stuff is a little janky when they ask you to, like, fling objects that aren't projectiles.
Okay.
But that's, like, a small thing. Like, the feel is nice. It felt very disposable to me. And so,
Damn.
I mean,
Damn! This is actually, like, the most negative I've heard about this game.
You're supposed to be the one to right the balance, Ben.
I think that's what he did, though. Because I was going in thinking, I mean, whatever. I haven't beaten the game. I'm less than halfway through the game, right?
Yeah.
So, but my experience with the game...
It's good.
Like,
Go through it.
It plays so well. I think the same mechanic... Like, I could sort of see what you're saying. Like, eventually, later on, the mechanic loses its novelty. Because once it becomes the mechanic, and because once
the resources aren't limiting you, really, then it's not a mechanic anymore. It's
it stops being... It's like when someone tells you, The Last of Us, you know, there's scarce bullets. And it's like, yeah, except until you get to freaking Pittsburgh. And then you have more than enough ammunition and health supplies and all that stuff.
Because you're not playing on grounded difficulty.
I was playing on Survivor when I did that. But yeah, maybe, who knows, grounded might be the thing. But basically the same point, right? Like, eventually, like, there's that initial stretch where it's really... Resident Evil 4 sort of runs into this a little bit, in that early on, the items are a little scarce, but later on, you're like, all right, now you're just playing...
Now I know how to conserve my stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't keep my box empty.
Yeah. And it's like,
now you're filling up.
Yeah, now you're playing menu Tetris, and, you know, whatever. Resident Evil 4 is still a fantastic game. I just think that game just got great flow. I think the opening to that game, while being predictable, because
there's a lot of cinematic walking in that opening.
Okay, aside the fact that there's cinematic walking in a 2D platformer, right, which is a sin, I would still say that opening is really effective.
It's a nice opening, yeah. It's pretty effective.
Yeah.
It does it doesn't overstay its welcome, really, and it hits the beats it needs to hit.
And I think
I like how it uses, like, the movement to the right, and then the movement back to the left, kind of like showing the passage of time and how things change.
I don't think the game is as bad as other Metroidvanias are about making, you got this new power, now you can open a new door. Like, I think Guacamelee was terrible about that in comparison.
Right. Guacamelee was like, now you can break the blue box.
Ori,
now
I feel like...
break the yellow box.
Ori, I feel like you actually are exploring this area, this place, this thing, the forest, if you will.
Right.
The blind forest, if you will. And... Sorry.
It's an interesting expression, blind forest.
Yeah. Especially in that game. Like, I think, you know, when that one scene happens, you're like, oh, and the blind forest.
That's what they meant.
Yeah. I just think, I think the game's a little bit more creative than you're giving it credit to, though. Like, I don't buy... Because I get what you're trying to describe. Like, in my mind, you're describing that it's a really well-made game, but it's vanilla ice cream. It's really good vanilla ice cream.
I feel like even that isn't quite how I felt.
Dude, that's how you worded it just now.
That's kind of how I worded it. It is pretty creative. Like, there are some interesting powers. Yeah. It feels really good. The visual design is excellent all the way through.
It's one of the best looking games this year. And listen, we're gonna, if we do like separate awards, I am looking forward to arguing Witcher 3 versus Ori and the Blind Forest, because I don't think you can dismiss Ori just like that as a look.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard because Witcher 3 looks phenomenal, but yeah. I
think that's definitely like something you can talk about. It has a lot of good ideas, but I don't know. It was just one of those game experiences where it didn't like push against me that much, and so I just kind of went through it really smoothly, and then I was done, and it was past me.
Damn.
It went down smooth like cherry cola.
I mean, hey, what it is what it is. Didn't click. I don't know. I'm surprised.
But there is something wrong with you.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong. Did you use the arrow keys at all while playing Ori and the Blind Forest?
I have played that game on a controller.
Oh.
It plays nice on the controller.
Did you use the arrow keys while playing the Crypto the Necrodancer?
All the time, 100% of the time.
Transition though, god damn.
That was the worst transition of all time. Ben ruined it in 2 seconds. That could not have been a more easier setup. He's like, you could have just turned that into, I didn't use it for it, but I did use it for, you wouldn't go with it. Fuck you. Fuck you. This is why me and Chris work as a duo podcast. He catches these moments.
I thought we had something going earlier. Now
I thought we had something. You're going to just throw it away.
They can't all be perfect.
Me and Chris were on our podcast.
We're always perfect.
Look, so a few weeks back, there was a Clay free week, and it definitely did its job because I bought 2 Clay games.
The Necrodancer?
I got 2 Clay games, actually, that weekend.
Crypto's okay, whatever.
I got Crypto the Necrodancer, which is produced by Clay.
Oh.
So it was not Clay. Mm-hmm. They helped produce it, and it was part of this sale week, and everything was like half off and free for the weekend.
Okay.
And so the sale lasts a little longer than the free weekend.
Uh-huh.
So like you get to the end of it, you're like, I want to keep playing.
Right. So
great, it's on sale.
Right.
And I bought 2 games. And I got wrapped up the most in Crypto the Necrodancer, which is a great game, perhaps too great.
Fuck you. Get off this podcast right now. You're done the rest of the year with this one-up bullshit that you just did.
Okay. I'm going to try and explain myself, my experience with this game.
Okay.
So Crypto Necrodancer first is a really good game design. It's a really smart idea.
Okay.
It's a rogue. It's basically a roguelike in a pretty serious sense. Like it's like Rogue, top down, 2D RPG kind of thing. Grid. You move, the enemies move at the same time.
Procedurally generated levels. One death means you gotta start all the way from the beginning.
Right. There is some persistence with the game, but that's the general idea. The twist on the design is songs are playing, and you have to move in time with the beat of the song. And when you screw up, maintaining that movement also builds a multiplier for your currency that you use in the shops that you find in each level that let you buy more stuff. And you progress and you play the game. And it really gives this great sense of urgency to it that kind of gives it a very different feel from other games like it. Like I played Dungeons & Dragons more before and never really held my attention. But this was like
Dragons?
Dungeons of Dreadmore.
Oh, okay. I thought Dungeons and Dragons wasn't a roguelike.
I've played Dungeons and Dragons, but that's a completely different beast.
I want to know your Dungeons and Dragons experience. But no, continue. Sorry.
So yeah, it's always really exciting. You're constantly you have to constantly be acting no matter what situation you get in. So it's very challenging at first, and then you gradually learn the levels, and you learn how to avoid the enemies, and you get better, and then you beat it, and you move on to the next area. And generally with the basic progression as you start, it's you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can do it one zone at a time, which is nice. And so I really enjoyed that game. I liked that system. I liked learning it.
Cool
I'm big into rhythm games like that. Yeah. It's a cool spin. It's a cool spin on rhythm games. It's a cool spin on roguelikes. 2 great tastes that somehow taste great together.
Yeah. I was going to say, for instance, the Bunny Hop video, right? Because he did one a few months before this game came out, which was about... It strictly started with the Evil Within, with the idea that the Evil Within uses the same control scheme as all these other games, and all these games keep having the fucking craft a noise-making item, throw it one way, run the other, even though, like, Watch Dogs, you're dodging the fucking popcorn salesman. In Alien Isolation, you're dodging a xenomorph, but the solution's the same. It's like, we fucked up a little bit here. Like, if no one's seeing the problem, it's that we've homogenized these games too much, and I'm not getting as excited, right?
We're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and part of it, he was saying, was due to control scheme, whereas, like, games like Snake Eater and Splinter Cell and Resident Evil, they had different controls, but the 2 deliberate games in that equation added to a different experience. Demon's Souls, for instance, is that, right? When you initially play it, you go, this isn't fast enough, this isn't smooth, this isn't precise, and you end up going, actually, it is precise, it's deliberate, and that's what
different.
It's what makes the combat enjoyable in the grand scheme of things. It's why people.
That's why I love Monster Hunter.
That's what I was getting to. Yes, Monster Hunter, And this was like, they made a whole game around like 4 fucking keys on a keyboard, essentially.
It's just the arrow keys, nothing else.
Yeah. And it adds to it. I was gonna say, when he got to the end, he's like, he wanted to play that game with the DDR dance pad.
There's a mode for that in that
I know.
game.
I was gonna ask from there. Would you ever play this game on a DDR?
I'd think about it, but
it sounds fun.
So I got way into it.
Yeah.
But as of this time, I have uninstalled that game.
Oh, you monster! Because
your
PCs.
As I said. So, what happened for me with the game...
Oh, why it's too
good? Yeah, why I said it was too good. Okay. I'm coming back to that. I'm not just leaving that out there.
Okay.
So there's sort of a story progression to the game.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. There are a lot of playable characters, but there are kind of 3 main playable characters, kind of 3 generations of women in this family dealing with this cursed loot and the curse of the Necrodancer.
What a great curse.
Yeah. Not really. You'd be surprised.
Okay.
It's pretty funky, but not in the way you think. So
I don't care if that wasn't intentional. That's your best podcast moment.
So
moment of the year.
And so the first character you use is like the default character, basically, and you're basically just learning the rules of the game. And the second character works differently, and it's a cool twist on it. In that you keep your you're not using any of the weapons, but you're attacking in a different way. You're kind of trying to move away from the enemies instead of moving into them, which is different. It feels good. And so I was moving through the story and learning these new things, and I go through the cycle of learning and dying and retrying, and then I get to the last character in this story progression. And this is like fucking super hardcore mode. This is like some Dante Must Die Master Ninja shit. It's, you have half a heart, so any attack kills you.
Right.
You get and if you miss the beat, you die.
Right.
Just like in real life.
And you get 1 potion, so you have 2 tries for fucking up. And you can't pick up any other weapons besides the default dagger. And it starts you in the last area instead of in the first area. So...
Lord have mercy.
I'd probably gotten through the first 2 those 4 areas, like one at a time, with those first 2 characters in about 12 hours, let's say. I spent at least that much time just trying to beat one area with this last character, and I couldn't do it. I put these marathon sessions, and I got really, really close one time. I got the boss of that last area down to 1 heart and died.
That's awesome. So you went back after that?
I went back after it, then kept dying again, and eventually it's like, this is taking up too much of my mental energy, it's too stressful, it's just too much, and I'm not enjoying myself anymore.
So then
you can't win, Ben.
Yeah, then it's not too good, though. So then now, you're just a false prophet, because you also said the game's too good, but judging by your description, the scenario wasn't that it was too good, it was that it became too frustrating. That's not good.
It became too frustrating.
Yeah.
It's not good, I guess.
Yeah.
That is not good. And a lot of the game seems built around catering to, like, the really, really good players. In a way, it's like, if you look at the Steam achievements list.
Yeah.
Most of it is really, really difficult achievements.
That's frankly how achievements should have been.
And so most of it, like, if you look at the completion percentage, a lot of it's at like 1% or less.
Good.
So they're real achievements. It's tough stuff. It's not
people who get all the achievements. There's a difference between getting a platinum in Crypto the Necrodancer and getting the platinum in The Walking Dead.
So I kind of thought, like, I need to beat with this character to, like, have beaten the game, but now I don't really feel that way anymore. So I'm done with that game.
I'm gonna stick to I beat it with 1 character, I beat the game. And then if I really want to go down crazy path, I'll go down crazy path. But come on.
I might come back to it someday, but not
does that
now.
bother you that so much of the game is built for complete? Because like, here's the thing: like, it still doesn't ruin it for the people that really want to just learn a few characters, right? In theory.
No.
Yeah.
Like, it's really like, if there wasn't a story behind that character, I wouldn't have minded. I probably just wouldn't have tried it.
Oh, you found the story of that character compelling.
I kind of want to know what happened at the end of their, like, trying to deal with this curse.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. You should have fought harder.
I fought really hard.
You have to go back, Ben.
Now you have to go back. Now you have to go back before I spoil it for you via YouTube or something.
I'll probably spoil it myself via YouTube. I don't care that much anymore. I mean, usually, like, most things, like, I can push through with enough persistence. I beat the last boss of Shinobi. I beat
When
the
was the last?
level.
Wait. When was the last time? When did you beat the last boss in Shinobi? What year was this?
Last boss of Shinobi was a while ago.
2011.
Earlier. Like
Okay,
5
so there you
years
go.
ago.
There you go. You can't use examples from that long ago.
I
What's
beat
been your most recent like conquest of something?
Super difficult.
Yeah.
Well, let's all think on that. I know what mine is.
Well, I was gonna. Say
I did a lot of Bayonetta 2 stuff,
Yeah, but even I beat all that.
but I actually didn't finish up the last witch trial on that.
I did.
Hmm.
I even beat Rodin in that game. Is it Rodin or Rodan?
Rodan.
It's Rodan, but it's an I.
I feel it's more like Rodan.
Yeah.
Rodan,
Well,
yeah,
because
that's
I mean, whatever. I skipped the cutscenes too much in Bayonetta, so.
Gagan, you heathen.
It's big. Well, come on. Anyway.
My
Maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know.
No, listen. Trust me.
But
I was feeling that during the Bloodborne's DLC, but I couldn't bring myself to summon someone for Ludwig. I said fuck it on what was his name? Lawrence of Arabia.
I took Lawrence of Arabia down.
And was it worth it?
Oh my god, no! But I did it.
Yeah, it's like I felt like even if I got through this, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, to be fair, this is still Chris. Chris is still young and spry. Ben,
So, like,
we're career peeps. We're old now.
I guess so. But like I spent more than 6 hours on this. So I felt like I gave it more than enough of a
you
shot.
gave it a fair shot. You eventually just ran into a wall where maybe you weren't.
Maybe it's too much.
Yeah.
So I played through that. And I played a bunch of Invisible Ink, which is another really
time out. I want you to know that you had a pleasant, enjoyable playtime experience with Ori. Came away not thinking all that much of the game. Now, before I finish the sentence, let's be clear here. By your descriptions of both games, it sounds like Crypt of the Necrodancer also has the benefit of just being wildly creative in a way that Ori isn't necessarily.
It's creative in a different way.
Yeah. Well,
but it's a creative
more so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more unique in the sense that, you don't play...
Like, the design is really something you've never seen before.
Yeah,
whereas
Ori is like...
a lot of really smart refinements of an existing thing.
Exactly. Thank you. And that helps, but really it seems like the games that are treating you like a piece of shit are the ones you're responding to, whereas the game that's like, no, have fun, be entertained, is like, eh.
That's what I look for these days. I kind of want to be pushed a bit,
Mm-hmm. You were big on Talos Principle because the story...
I was big on Talos Principle, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just the puzzles, it was that the story challenged. I mean, you responded to Antechamber with, oh, fuck those puzzles.
I beat all the puzzles in the Chamber. Yeah, that game was challenging and good.
Yeah, it's just whatever.
Just not as good as the Swapper.
Come on. The Swapper is very good. Stop speaking, though. Anyway. Then you did Invisible Ink, which is a proper clay game in that they
proper clay game.
Their last game was Mark of the Ninja, which I think is rad.
Yeah, and this is like Mark of the Ninja meets XCOM,
which sounds fucking rad.
Just pretty rad. So it's a turn-based stealth game, turn-based squad-based stealth game. Mm-hmm. Essentially, you control a small group, and you're basically performing various heists. Mm-hmm. And you sneak around the environment, you stick to cover, you lure enemies out, and then attack them from behind and knock them out, and hide bodies. You hack into things.
Mm-hmm.
And like Mark of the Ninja, it has a really good, clear visual design.
Mm-hmm.
You always know when you're hidden. You always know. Yeah.
That's been their stamp since they were making Shank, for instance.
Right. I mean, good art is Shank, but I was just more like the feedback.
Right.
Like the stealth is not ambiguous.
Right.
The way that it is in like Metal Gear.
Define what you feel ambiguous about Metal Gear.
You don't always know exactly when an enemy is going to see you or how far they can see or.
Oh, right. You mean in Metal Gear 5, right? Because there's no cones and.
Metal Gear 5 is like, no cones, no camo index, nothing like that.
The even like as like a logical thing, it's really silly because it's like he's prone, he's stealth, he's up on his knees, he's not stealth. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a little jarring.
Yeah, there's less abstract. There's plenty of abstraction in this, sort of, which makes it work.
Right.
Especially because it's a turn-based game. And challenges gradually escalate. You come across new hurdles. Mm-hmm. And it's playing also with something of a roguelike element, and that it's constantly auto-saving. Doesn't really want you to go backwards. There's persistence to it. You can lose members of your team if you screw up, and you can miss objectives, and you just kind of have to keep going forward. And I was enjoying that a lot until I got the expansion at the same time as I bought that game. Mm-hmm. And the expansion campaign is a little longer and more challenging, and they throw some wrinkles in.
There's an expansion campaign?
The expansion expands the campaign.
Contingency plan,
yes. It came out right around the time of the sale.
I have to look, see if I have that. I don't think I have that.
I don't think... You probably don't if you bought it closer to when it came out.
Huh.
That adds on to the campaign. Right. Like, there's... when you get to... You sort of start with this AI that you're moving around, and there's like a finite time limit. You're trying to find something to keep it going and keep your mission going. Uh-huh. And basically in this expansion campaign, it's sort of, there's like a wrinkle at the end that sort of just like doubles the length of the campaign. Mm-hmm. And you go up against stronger enemies. And I ran up against guards with armor stronger than any weapon I possessed, standing in front of the exit, standing between me and the exit. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't find a way to get past. And I stopped playing.
What is with you?
Like the theme of tonight is get better video games, Ben.
Yeah,
get better video games.
Never give up, never surrender. Did you know that?
I'm trying to try all these games now.
So how is... Yeah, it's true. You are trying to try more multiple games, considering I've done a bad job this year in that regard. Remember when I was going for 52 games beaten?
Oh my god. What were you thinking?
I know, it was so hard.
Yeah, it's like I hadn't been playing that many games over the course of the year, and now I've played 4 or 5 games over the course of a month.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just picks up speed. I noticed that.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of bouncing through stuff.
Sometimes you just get in a
good... the Necrodancer I beat.
Yeah.
We've decided that.
You've beaten it 3 times, effectively.
Yep.
Right? 3 characters, and then you got stuck on the 4th?
I got stuck on the 3rd.
Oh, well, then you beat it twice, and you got stuck on the 3rd.
Twice, it's fine.
What a loser.
It's hard.
And I beat Ori. That's good.
Yeah, Ori you beat.
That counts, yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say, these 3 games sort of, like, remind you of, like... Alright, so I would think none of them quite fit the middle tier bracket, right? Like of a Pillars or Kerbal Space Program or
Ori might.
Ori's close, yeah.
Oh, Ori's close because Microsoft's funded it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's got the production value, but again, like it shows this weird... There's a range now that's building in that lower tier, right? Because Crypt of the Necrodancer, I would guess, is the cheapest of the 3, right?
Crypt of the Necrodancer was the same price as Invisible Ink.
Damn, that's crazy. I think Invisible Ink... I would assume Invisible Ink is a little bit more expensive. It was early access.
I got with... Wait, maybe when I got with the expansion, it was more expensive in that sense.
Maybe. Who knows? It's pretty rad, though. I think, these are pretty... it's weird because this year we have Undertale, which makes you question, like, all right, that game does look a little, unimpressive visually, right?
Kind of,
and
yeah.
Crypt isn't exactly a looker, but I think Invisible Ink's got style in a way
It is like a stylish game.
Yeah.
Crypt Necrodancer is not a particularly great looking game. It's just it's clear enough.
But
it does what it needs to do.
Ori, that is a looker.
Yeah.
That is a good looking game.
That's an award-winning looker.
Yeah.
The last game I played is kind of the opposite of Ori, but I'm not too far into it.
What's the last game?
Right. Zachtronics TIS 100.
Right.
Which I got practically to spite Gagan instead of getting
Infinite Factory. Why? It's so good.
I want to do the game that makes me do assembly programming.
Oh, so Infinite Factory and TIS 100, they're both Zachtronics games. They're both made by the guy who made Space Chem, and Ben and I are of the opinion that Space Chem is motherfucking excellent.
Last gen's best puzzle game.
Yeah, I think we did say that might be the winner over Braid, even though, I think that's
what we said.
Yeah. Do you think maybe we should change that now to retroactively? We should maybe consider that.
You can't it's over.
Not really.
We retcon third-person shooter.
Yeah, but that was before we had it all in.
Yeah.
You gotta stand behind your decisions, Gagan.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Braid was the correct answer anyway. We fucked up. Anyway.
What's wrong with Space Chem?
Nothing. Space Chem's excellent. That game, sometimes I think should have been in my top 10 of the gen, but whatever. I actually tried to get Towers to play it, but he won't, because he's like, I'm only allowed to recommend him Platinum games right now, because he hasn't played the Wonderful 101 yet, and I'm like, okay. I'll just keep badgering him the Wonderful 101 thing. Anyway, the point is, Space Chem is awesome. The reason why I like Infinite Factory, right, is because Infinite Factory is continuing to build on the thing that's cool about Space Chem, which is, it's not just that the puzzles can be hard as shit, right? If it was just that, it would be a dime a dozen puzzle game, especially one that doesn't look pretty. The beauty of Space Chem is multiple solutions, is that there are correct answers, there might be 10 of them, but there's at least 3 or 4 answers that are way more efficient than everything else. And in Infinite Factory, you'll get a simple solution. There's a great video on this, which shows you that build a machine that builds 10 perfect crosses. And the first time you'll build a machine, you'll go, all right, cool, I got my part. It's just going to make 10 more perfectly, no problem. And
put one part, then the other part, then the other part, then the other part, and it goes out, and we're done.
Yeah. Like, it's just going to do that. And what happens is the first time it makes the cross exactly the way you need it, and then the next time, because you got the machine running full steam, and now it's not actually putting all of it together, and you're like, oh, fuck. And you got to put more work in to actually get the thing, and it becomes the way the video described it is that it's a puzzle-solving exercise. It's more like you're solving a problem, not necessarily solving a puzzle.
Problem-solving exercise.
Yeah, and it's awesome, and I think that's so freaking cool, and it's something that even John Blow, when he was talking about what he would have done with Portal 2 is, he said that Portal 2 was a little too rigid as a sequel to Portal, right?
Right.
Which is true. I felt like a lot of Portal 2 solutions, besides the fact that I didn't think it was as tight as Portal 1, there were times when I felt like, because Valve couldn't come up with a creative answer, they created puzzles that were more annoying than anything. Like, I didn't feel smart when I found a random spot on the wall. I went, oh, fuck you, Valve. You know what I mean?
Well, Portal 1, they were willing to kind of just blanket the walls and floors and ceilings with portalable surfaces. Just kind of be like, you can figure this out. If you find some way to break this, good for you.
Yeah.
And Portal 2 is a lot more, there are 5 spots in this level you can put a portal on.
Yeah, it became more direct. It became more focused. It became
it's more focused. It's a little simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still well-designed puzzles, but there's not as much room to explore and be creative.
Yeah.
And the Zachtronic games are always great at giving you room for that. And
so why do you really want to play a programming game like TIS 100?
So for me,
mm-hmm.
playing through Space Chem, it reminded me a lot of what I'd done studying computer science, actually. Because that process you're talking about,
mm-hmm.
it's a lot like creating a program.
Mm-hmm.
You have this goal you have in mind,
mm-hmm.
and you have the tools at your disposal which to accomplish it, and you put something together, and you try it out, and you probably fuck it up somehow. You miss something or it doesn't work the way you want, and you troubleshoot it, and you iterate, and then you come up with a solution. and then you look around and you look at what other people have done. And you're like, wow, there are all these other even more efficient ways to do it that I didn't even think of.
Mm-hmm.
And Space Chem uses a lot of like similar kinds of ideas of like recursive stuff. Like you're building these loops and you're trying to time everything up. And it shows how efficient you're being and how many instructions you're using and these kinds of ways of measuring yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, like, the idea of that person making a game where you're more directly just like working on computer programs.
Right.
In a way, just like making a simple kind of computer program. That sounded really cool to me. And that's sort of what this is. And it has some of those spatial elements of Space Chem.
Mm-hmm.
Mixed in with like putting in code.
And
I think it's really cool. I'd like to explore more of it when I get the chance. And yeah, it has all that same stuff that Infinity Factory does, including the ways of measuring yourself and like time and tools used and so forth.
Whatever. I guess we'll be united next year when The Witness comes out. There's no
Which
way
you
you
will.
can turn on me on that.
I'm playing that game.
Yeah.
I'm playing the shit out of that game.
We can even get Chris on that. He liked Raid.
That I did.
Mm-hmm. No, TIS 100. I'm gonna buy it because I like that guy's games, and it's just it wasn't. I've got so many other 2015 things that are installed on my PC that I want to get to that are just strictly the indie stuff. Like I said, after Witcher 3, it's gonna be all stuff I wanted to play more or less, besides Xenoblade and whatever.
So what kind of machines have you been messing with, Gagan?
Besides The Witcher 3, which I was humoring the idea of doing a check-in, but let's move on for a bit. Let's make sure we save enough time to talk about some of these games. I played a William game, Final Fantasy Type 0 HD, and understand that
Okay, you can go that direction. That's fine.
Right, no, hold on. Wait, what were you going with?
No, it's past.
Okay. I missed a Transformers fun? Fuck. Anyway, whatever. I went with Final Fantasy Type 0. Because whatever, it's a Will game, and in theory we need to talk about it, and I basically close to beating... I beat Legacy of the Void, so, I did my job there. I gotta say, of the two games, you'll be surprised, but I liked Legacy of the Void way the fuck more. I'm sure you're stunned by this revelation that
Wait a second.
That Blizzard makes better video games than fucking Square Enix.
Hold the fucking phone right now.
I know, it's crazy. I get some of the things that William likes about the game. I would just disagree with the part that it's good.
So the basis of his argument.
So the basis of his argument is what I disagree with. I guess he should have been on for this, because I'm going to get a little heat. I don't think I'm going to get heated. Just let me put it this way. I had every intent of playing that game and then beating it, and then as soon as I started playing that game, I'm like, I'm not having more of this game shit.
I love how you gave shit to Ben this whole time of games defeating him.
Games defeated him. In my case, the game's a colossal bore. It's not difficult at all. It
defeated you.
It defeated you. Yeah, okay. You gave up.
All right, okay. Let me justify myself then first. The story is, I can't call it any supreme adjective to describe how poor it is, because I feel like that is underselling just how bad JRPG stories and settings and characters have been for fucking decades and apologized for by the RPG nerds of society. Haha, fuck you. Anyway, but their Type 0 takes place in a world. In the Final Fantasy 13 universe, no less. Because it has Lassie and Falsey. But...
Hooray.
Oh, God. Apparently, everyone has a case of amnesia, in the sense that when someone dies, right... Mm-hmm. People who knew that person loses memory of that person, right? So
everyone literally forgets you when you die.
Yes, everyone forgets you when you die, so the threat of death is not the same to the people in this world. That's why war, for instance, that's their justification. That's why war is happening so much in this world, is because no one's suffering the pain of loss, right? You know what I'm saying? And I felt like in practice, like if you tell that story on paper, that in theory could be a really fucking dark and compelling story. Like think about that for a second. Speaking from my perspective, you know, I never once told my best friend that I love him, right? Because, you know, that's gay.
It's unspoken. It's not gay, you fruit.
Yeah. Well, no, the point is, like, when he passed away, that was just one of those regrets I had. It's like, you know, what the fuck? That's stupid. I should have said that, you know? He was an important piece of my life. And that's why, you know, my relationships with my other friends got that much closer. Like, me and Eric, we hug in a way that, like, you know, whatever.
You used to not do.
Diddle each other's balls a little bit.
Yeah, let's not go that far. We haven't gone that mile. But, like, Type 0 doesn't really explore that stuff because it's a Japanese RPG, so it's all anime about it.
Yeah.
So
all anime about it.
Yes. For instance, you're gonna play as a bunch of kids who go to a school, a military school of gifted children, and it's called Academia.
Oh my god.
This reminds me of Valkyria Chronicles.
That is disrespectful to Valkyria Chronicles.
Valkyria Chronicles 2.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I don't care about 2. That game doesn't exist. Anyway, and whatever, like that. Okay, that's just strike one, right? Like it can't be the only thing. They all must be suffering through a case of amnesia because at one point, one of the characters had to explain to one other dude what a cemetery is. And I'm willing to accept that this world doesn't know the pain of loss, right? Like, whatever, that makes sense. They're at a fucking military school. They know what a cemetery is, alright? Get the fuck out of here. That is just that's patronizing as shit. That's 2. That's strike 2. The third one is there are Mughals in this game.
Sounds
and
good.
They all say Kubo after everything, which is already pretty stupid. But he's trying to give the girl his name, and she renames him Moglin, or whatever the fuck she renamed him. And I'm like, okay.
Winkle.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, this is shit. And one of the characters named Nine. Have either of you ever watched a Justice League cartoon as a kid?
No.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, do you ever remember the episode where, like, the bad guys are trying to split the Justice League apart? It's Gorilla Grodd and his crew? I'm going to say no. Okay.
What do you
If in this episode, Clayface dresses up as Flash, and Batman instantly knows it, and Batman makes fun of him, saying, you overplayed your hand, because he said yo one too many times for it to be Flash. This fucking motherfucker in Final Fantasy Type 0 says yo after everything. I mean,
some Clayface ass motherfucker right there.
He's like he's like the white guy who's trying to act black. He's that. He's anti Eminem in this sort of way.
Yo, that's messed up, yo.
Yeah, exactly. It's like too much yo. So at that point, I've already checked out of the story.
Okay.
Which means now it's all up to the gameplay, right?
I thought you'd care about story.
Do I care about stories? Sometimes. I think I do. I think I'm reasonable about video game stories, which is, if they're good, I'll sit through them. I sat through The Walking Dead. I sat through Life is Strange. I'm not an ape.
Type 0 is not one of those stories.
Type 0 is not a story you should pay attention to. It's fucking garbage. It insults you as a viewer because it's patronizing in a way that JRPGs are. It's a cartoon. It's basically aimed at kids in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And the characters are unlikable and stupid, and I don't want to sit through that. So the game
cemeteries, right? I have a question.
What?
So if everyone forgets about someone when they die, like, how do they handle the body? Like, it's like, whoa, what's this dead body doing here?
Listen, don't question Square Enix. Apparently you're, like, because the guy still has a brother, and he goes to see his brother's grave, but the whole time I'm going, he's like, yeah, but you don't, like, you shouldn't be feeling any pain. Yeah, I guess their idea is, well, he's not going to cry at the grave. And it's like, a lot of people don't go to a cemetery and instantly cry. Like, after a while, and whatever, I don't want to word it like this.
Everyone handles grief in their own way.
You make peace with the fact that they're gone, and now you're just trying to remember the good times. In, like, if you go to, like, some people go to a gravestone and they have a conversation with no one there, and whatever, that's just the thing people do. And whatever. I'm not getting into that.
There's no, like, one right way.
Yeah. We're getting
be sad.
we're getting a little way
Get
above
real existential right now.
this. Yeah.
These are not questions that will be tackled in Final Fantasy Type Zero.
No, not at all. Not at all. These are, and they should. Well,
They
why
could've,
can't
yeah.
Square do that? You know. Anyway, so the gameplay. You effectively have like a bunch of characters. A lot of them are named after playing cards 9, 7, Jack, Queen, King. The main character is Ace. He throws cards like he's Gambit. You press square, it does the basic attack.
You press
square, right? When characters are downed, like eliminated, you can, I guess, absorb Phantasma from them. You use Phantasma to fill up magic, for instance. You can upgrade your lightning. You can evolve your magic spells. You can increase, like you have balance of a checks and balances thing where I want my thunder to do more damage. That's fine, but now we're gonna make the cost higher. I want my fire to cost less. That's fine, but we're gonna gimp its range. Like things like that'll happen,
Okay.
right? Like that's a system in the game. Overall, there's a timing mechanic to the combat, though. Ideally, you're really just pressing square. You're locking onto enemies, and you're just hitting the square button for most of the time. If you hold, the idea to not mash the button is you hold the lock on, and there's a yellow, more or less a blue reticle around them, and once it turns yellow, once it turns red, is what they call a kill strike or whatever. There was a word for it. I don't care. The point is, once it's that and you hit the button and you get a direct hit while it's still red, you're going to get an instant kill or like critical hit on the enemy, right?
It's like
Sweet.
In the case of someone like Ace, he throws cards, which means the projectile itself has like its own time and distance. So in the case of Ace, there's a timing to it, right? Like you need to learn how long between locking on and when it goes red you have. So you need to time exactly when you throw that card and when that card's going to get there. So when it gets there, it gets the critical hit in, right? So if you're just mashing a square when it's red, you're probably going to miss it, right? That's why Will says play as King. And to further point out that Will is a Dynasty Warrior scumbag, King is basically the game on easy mode because he shoots revolvers. So you basically just mash the square button like there's no tomorrow.
For a second, I thought he shot revolver guns.
No,
From
I'm sorry.
other guns.
He has revolvers, he shoots bullets, and the bullets travel really fast. He has, so basically he wrecks the game. There's a chick with a scythe, there's a chick with a sword, one with a hammer. Most of the chicks have healing spells to start off the bat because JRPGs are inherently sexist and the women are the healers.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. Others have like ice spells, fire damage, whatever, what have you. And so where the gameplay has its issues, right? First and foremost, if you're playing as any of the melee characters, I would argue it's a really dull beat 'em up, right? It doesn't have anywhere in the sense of game feel because none of the swords lack impact, right? There's no like tactical depth to the combat either in the grand scheme of things, right? You don't micromanage your team for the most part. You know, in defense of, I can't believe that I'm saying this, Final Fantasy 13, when you do paradigm shifts, you can at least paradigm it so they can specifically heal you and stuff, right?
Yep. Kind of, yeah.
You sort of
they'll prioritize.
Yeah,
it.
even in Tales of Symphonia, for instance, the idea is you have to rely on AI, right? But you can set their priorities. Like if I want, God, I don't remember any of the characters in those games other than Kratos. Kratos and Laura. Colette wasn't the healer. What was the there were the two elves. One of them was the sister. The older sister. She's the healer. Anyway, the point is, I would Rain, right. I would prioritize her to do...
I remember this.
Why do you remember this? You hate that game. Anyway, you prioritize
My
her.
friends really like it.
Do they really? It's not a bad game, dude. It's a good game. Anyway.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, I don't know why you hate it so much. It was an enjoyable JRPG. And for freaking Tales, it's like the most enjoyable thing in the world.
That's why I haven't played any of the Tales games.
So, like in her case, I would give her a priority. You have to heal me, or you're hitting this motherfucker with this specific magic spell. Usually, in her case, it would be light attacks, because that was the stuff. Whatever. In this, I couldn't find. I mean, it might be there because I didn't play it that long, but I couldn't find it, and that was stupid. So I didn't like having to do that. You don't fail until all of your party members are dead in a mission, which means you have a lot of a crew to work with, right? But at the same time, that means that your weakest member of your party is technically a liability, right? It means you have to level all of them. And this isn't a game where there's shared experience points, so you have to level them all individually. And it's a game made for a handheld in Japan, which means that it's built for you to fucking grind. And of the things you cannot say Final Fantasy Type 0 isn't, it's a fucking grind fest in the worst possible way, because there are strings of missions where eventually you gotta be like, no, you need to pick it up and get these people leveled up. And you can say that you don't need to do it with all of them, but I know enough from El Joso that at some point you are gonna rely on lesser members of your team, right? Mm-hmm. And because there's so many of them and so boring, I mean, they mitigate it a little bit, right? So, like, at home base, for instance, there's this one area where you can drop off your characters, and you talk to this one guy, and by the time you come back, for every 2 hours, they gained experience points. Every 2 hours in real life, right?
Even so when the game's off.
Yeah. Even when the game's off. And that helps, right? Like, that'll help improve the level of the game. But at the same time, it's, to me, the easiest solution to this is the universal experience points. Just,
always have universal experience points.
Yeah, it's not of difficulty. I understand it in Pokemon not being that way, right? Because I get that.
Doesn't have in Persona either. It doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah. Doesn't have
in Persona. Because you pick your crew. Yeah. No, there's no universal experience.
Yeah, because the crew dictates the level. The personas you're fusing don't necessarily, matter. They matter, but they matter in the way... They're gear, whereas the characters are the thing you level, right?
Yep.
That's the way it works. Which is fine, which is how Ni no Kuni is. Effectively, the monsters are gear.
Yeah.
So, and that hurts. Games. That hurts Type Zero's flow, because it got to a point where I'm just like, I don't want to fucking... Because, again, like, I'm playing The Witcher 3 this year. I played some Planescape. I played Divinity last year. I played a lot of Bloodborne this year. And I'm sorry, I didn't grind in any of those. I did not grind in Bloodborne. I got my ass kicked in Bloodborne. Let me throw that out there. I leveled up through getting my ass kicked so much, right? Mm-hmm. Just because you had to at some point. But it wasn't like I went out to farm. I was actually trying to progress in the game, or I would get myself summoned to someone else's world, because I'd look at it like, all right, whatever, I'll at least get some levels, and in theory, I'll be able to brace myself for when something's going to come on my end. It was strategic, but it wasn't something I was going out there to do, right? Type 0, I literally would have to dedicate time to grind, and I'm not a fan of that. That's bullshit. Killed the vibe of the game. And when it comes to the combat, nothing about it's interesting. If you're playing the melee characters, like I said, it's a poor man's beat 'em up, and I happen to play platinum games a lot. If you're playing as, the shooting characters, it's not particularly enjoyable. There's RTS missions in this game, by the way.
What?
Holy shit, are those...
Brutal Legend again.
I think the wording I would use is Total War style game. Have you ever played Total War?
Yes.
I actually haven't.
Okay, so there's the civilization part of Total War, which is like there's a big overworld.
Yeah.
Where
there's a big, large tactical thing.
Yeah, you're making a big, large tactical thing, setting up position, making decisions. In this case, there's a big overworld where there's this basic town that might be getting invaded, and there's these two other guard points, and then there's like a main area where the enemies are coming from. It's like the first RTS mission in the game. What you do is, you get on a chocobo. They don't tell you to get on a chocobo, but it's in your best interest to get on a chocobo, go up to these, like, random, like, abstract, like, walking soldier things that really don't interact with you, and kick them so you can help your, like, minion parties. Like, this is Dota, right?
Kick them?
Kick them. The chocobo kicks them. Like,
okay.
hit them. Like, you just press in the
Oh, okay.
You attack them. I'm sorry that I use a more descriptive way of putting it, Ben. Jesus. Anyway, you hit them, you knock them out, and you help the guards take over a base. You move on to the next part of the base. Okay. Now you move on to, and eventually, you gotta take care of all the bases, and you go, from one base to another, you send a party that way, right? Like, let's say we took over the first outpost. Now we got two other outposts we have to deal with. I go right, I let the rest of the army go left, that's not going to do me any good because simply my guy can't take over an outpost necessarily. So I go with the army and take care of that. Now the main side's coming from two different ways. So like I have an option. Do I go for the main area or do I go back to defend the previous outpost I got, or do I try to push forward? You know what I'm saying? It's like little strategic things you have to do. And again, it's basically it's a tactical game without the tactics at that point because there's no strategy to it. It's just like this laborious thing that comes down to you need to be very specific and you need to use one specific character who's probably best suited to hit multiple enemies in that overworld, right?
Huh.
You should probably be breeding your chocobo because if you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Because the chocobo, you get to fight him in the overworld outright. As in, you don't even have to fight him. The chocobo kicks it and they're good, right? And it's another thing in that game that just feels like unnecessarily there just to pad the game out, right? Added bonus, I wasn't a fan of the fact that the second mission of the game had me fight a thing that I effectively could not beat because he was way too high leveled, so they created a scenario where I have to run by an enemy that is like level 99, specifically meant for me to run by him over and over again, right? Only for me to fight a boss at the end, right? And I have to use a specific summon that the game specifically tells me to use right the fuck now, and it eliminates one of my characters, right? So now I had to do that fight with a character I wasn't particularly fond of, right? And whatever, I beat it, but it was the whole time it was just going, it's like, this is so lazily designed. This is everything people don't like about a JRPG. Mm-hmm. And more or less, it's everything people were getting up in arms about of what's wrong with Square Enix Final Fantasy. It's badly written, it's childish and immature in a way that's not endearing anymore, right?
Not to us.
I mean, is Final Fantasy really endearing to us? Oh, you meant like not to us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed, yeah. So it's just, I wasn't feeling it. I could see the combat not being boring necessarily, right? Because if you're into it, I could see, like, because there's so many of them, and, like, using the whip girl's inherently fun, because she's using a whip sword. But that's way too many characters, way too much of a grind. Not a fan.
Yeah. They're trying to keep them all, like, at an even level and strong enough seems like a pain in the ass.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean...
Especially if the combat's not good.
What do you expect from a Will game? Am I right, Ben? Am I right? Anyway.
That was your first clue.
Yeah, that should have been my first clue. On the other hand, because we can no longer be the unofficial Metal Gear Fan Club podcast, right? Because,
we could still be the official Platinum Fan Club podcast.
Oh, I believe that we're never going to be in question of ever being the official Platinum Games Fan Club podcast, because... I can safely say that while you probably should not be spending $49.99 on Transformers Devastation, God help you if you're Canadian, Transformers Devastation is worth playing, as opposed to Legend of Korra, where it's still definitely a budget game by Activision, right? Mm-hmm. In the sense that a lot of the level variety just isn't there, besides the fact that Platinum has a tendency to use some copy and pasted areas here and there. The other part is you spend a lot of time in the very opening area of the game, or what at least visually looks like the opening area of the game. You're in this main city. There's this giant like metal highway. You're doing a lot of back and forth tracking, and it's really just beat 'em up combat, right? Like it's not super complicated. The difference in Transformers Devastation is, I would argue, it's more of a loot RPG than their previous beat 'em ups, right? And I'd instantly go, uh-oh, but I think it sort of helps some of the playability of the game, right?
Okay.
Because it feels like you're always getting a cool little power-up that helps you know, further in the game, or like a new weapon if you're going to play it that way. In my case, I played the whole game as Optimus Prime, right? You could play as Bumblebee. You could play as Grimlock, the dinosaur guy. You
could play as a dinosaur?
You could play as Grimlock. Do you know who Grimlock is?
He's a dinosaur guy.
He's a Dinobot, basically. There's
Beast Wars.
There's two others I don't remember the name of. Anyway, the point is, I wish they made a cool Beast Wars game. Anyway, I played the most of the game as Optimus Prime. What I ended up doing is that there's a synthesized mechanic in the game, which is you take your weaker items and you fuse it with a different item, right? And it creates a stronger version of that base item, the base item. For instance, I would take a regular axe and fuse it with ice axes. For instance, now it would get an ice buff. It would also gain skills in certain cases, like certain skills would make Optimus faster. Other skills would make he would suddenly have a longer witch time, if you will.
So there's that mechanic's in the game?
Every platinum mechanic is in the game.
Kind of like how Wonderful 101 gets like that if you upgrade enough stuff?
There's a parry, let me put it this way. There's a parry system that's basically the parry system from Bayonetta, except not as good. There's a version of witch time in the game, and it doesn't quite have bat within, but there's something similar to that. There's a stat in the game that's a hidden stat, but you can get it through skills, which increases the invincibility frames in your dodge, right?
Yes.
So that's basically bats within, and that I wasn't particularly fond of, because in the early going, I thought that dodge was kind of not as good, right? I think the telegraphing is awkward in Transformers in comparison to Bayonetta, right? I think part of it is because Bayonetta, right as soon as they telegraph, they attack. Whereas with Transformers, it's like you see the wind-up coming, and then there's this weird delay between when
there's too much telegraphing?
Something like that. You almost like you get psyched out into going earlier than you should.
Okay.
Right? Which, that's sloppy play on my part, but, yeah. At the same time, I wasn't fond of the way dodge worked in the game, but the combat was there. There's a decent amount of combos to it.
Okay.
It's
like still light heavy kind of thing?
It's still light heavy. It is. Platinum Games definitely needs to do a new genre, because unless they come up with a new game like The Wonderful 101 or at least something like Revengeance, they've officially created their own formula, which is the Platinum game now. It's basically the beat 'em up, which is, again, the light attack, heavy attack thing. It's going to have a parry, it's going to have a slow-mo move, and if we're going to keep getting that, I want something else now already, right? Which, thank God, they're making Scalebound. But,
right.
So light attack, heavy attack, you know how that works. When you get through a string of attacks, right, you usually get the marker, but I turn the marker off, to transform into a vehicle and hit them with the vehicle attack, right?
Cool.
Which is more like a stun move, which is really important. So, but they only come up when you finish a specific combo string, right? So, for instance, in Bayonetta, a big, powerful one is punch, kick, punch. That's the way I'm putting it.
So, are they like the equivalent of the Wicked Weaves in Bayonetta?
Yes, exactly. But it's a button press. Whereas, like, in Bayonetta, it was the third hit in that combo would be the Wicked Weave, right?
It's just how you end the combo.
Yeah. And what it does is it can either break a shield in certain cases, it can stun people, it juggles enemies, it helps you do that, right? So that was a cool mechanic. You have guns, ranged weapons, you have a sniper rifle, there's revolvers, a flamethrower, rocket launchers, shit like that.
Can you juggle people with guns?
They have ammo, so not necessarily as well. It's not exactly Devil May Cry. You have more scenarios where you need to shoot people from a distance in certain cases, which makes sense. It's Transformers, right? Like, that's going to happen. I think they use the gun specifically to, like, sort of create variation in the gameplay. But the core combat loop is mostly good. I think Saito is the director of this game, right? He directed Revengeance, so you could see some of his influence on the game. The biggest difference, I think, that puts Transformers over the hump, besides the loot, which I do think adds to it because you always have some gear you can get, right?
Okay.
Is there's a lot of bosses in Transformers Devastation, which wasn't quite the case with Legend of Korra, where they really had the final boss and then this one other boss would just keep showing up over and over again, right?
Okay.
It's not to say you don't fight certain enemies multiple times. You do, because Platinum game. But
it's not quite the same.
It's not quite the same. You fight Starscream. You fight Shockwave, I want to say is a Decepticon. There's a Shockwave and there's a Soundwave. One of them is a Decepticon. You fight him. There's another one. There's the Constructicons that turn into Devastator, right? So you fight them actually individually at first, and then they Megazord fucking up into this big thing, and it's actually a pretty hype-ass fight. And then there's actually another enemy, and I don't know my Transformers lore, but he totally looked like a fucking Megazord to me. I'm like, I didn't know you fight these things. This is so cool. You fight him and Devastator at the same time at one point because, again, Platinum game.
Whoa.
And yeah, it was hype. Like the whole time, like there was a good sense of rhythm to the game after a certain point. It could use more variety because the few instances it takes to sort of differentiate itself. Like it does this one part where you play the game with a top-down camera. Fuck that part. It felt awkward to play the game that way. There was also this like side-scrolling thing on a bridge where you were just shooting at tanks and jets and hopping across a like fucked up bridge, right?
It just wasn't very interesting.
It just wasn't all that interesting, yeah. But overall, no, I like Transformers Devastation. I would give it like it's an okay game. The combat mechanics, they feel good. You know what I mean? If you ever wonder why I like Platinum games a lot and why, for instance, I'm not the biggest fan of how hitting things in The Witcher feels, as simple as this. Go punch something in Transformers Devastation, you'll instantly go, yeah, that's got some oomph behind it. And then go hit something with a sword in The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is a way better game, by the way. But go stab something with a sword in The Witcher 3, and it's like, it just doesn't have the same feel. It doesn't have the same level of satisfaction of just simply pressing a button and hitting something, right? That's something Platinum's really good at. It made the Transformers stylish. I think, I'm not going to say the story is good, but because it's very Saturday morning cartoon, because they went with G1 Transformers, right? Like the very classic art style. Yeah. It definitely has that Saturday morning cartoon plot. And I think it adds to the game because it's very basic and you're just like, yeah, this is classic Megatron and Optimus. This is pretty cool. It's just short. You could beat it in 5 hours. I beat it in one night, specifically, right?
Of course.
And then, come on. And the thing that's meant to give the game legs is the challenge mode, right? There's the 50 challenges, which, if you played Revengeance and you've done Witch Trials and Bayonetta, assume that they're not going to be easy, especially if you want to S-rank them and shit.
Just like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a quintessential Platinum game. Unlike Legend of Korra, there's more to the game because...
Cool.
While the level... I think maybe you could argue that Korra's got better level variety, for instance. But the core action just never comes together because it takes too long for her to get her powers, for starters, in that game.
Alright.
And when she gets them, you've already fought every enemy in the game until the final boss. And that's just dull.
Kind of runs out of variety earlier than it should.
Ironically, I would say Korra had the potential for the most interesting combat between the two games. Because Transformers combat, I think, is vanilla Platinum.
But at least it gives room to explore its systems.
Yeah, exactly. You get more room to really mess with the combos. And they seem better at vanilla Platinum game than they seem to actually try to do anything interesting with Korra's elemental powers. So, that's a little disappointing. But
yeah, it is what it is.
So I will not be arguing for a Platinum game for Game of the Year this year. That much I can safely say after playing Transformers Devastation.
But at least it is solid.
It's solid. I think it's worth playing. I think it's a good Steam sale game, for instance. Whereas Legend of Korra, I think, is a good, maybe Humble Bundle game when you buy better games and Korra just comes with it. You know what I mean? I don't like using the word bad to describe Legend of Korra, but average would be appropriate. Like, it's an average video game. And average, I feel like, is entirely because I have a Platinum bias.
Yeah.
I think in my heart of hearts, it's probably a bad game.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy the loot game.
That was sickening on some level, but I think it does it in an interesting way, at least, because so much of it is still very much about getting good at it, right? Because there's a scoring system.
I think ultimately for me, and I think you're probably similar, because I'm like this is Monster Hunter. It's like if I like doing the combat, then the loot is a nice little bonus.
Yes, exactly.
But ultimately, it's like I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
something I don't enjoy
Yeah.
just to get a
Yeah.
shiny sword.
As long as the skill aspect of the game isn't lost for the sake of the loot, right?
Okay.
Which is what I feel happens in a game like Destiny and Diablo, which is that any idiot can play those games. Like, beating a strike in those games wasn't a testament of skill. It was tolerating this giant bullet sponge because the game gimps you.
But what about beating a raid?
I didn't beat a raid. Who knows? But those are one
You never
mission.
played the real Destiny then.
Those are
according to the fan
those
base.
are 2 missions in a sea of, I want to say, if I'm being nice, 30 other missions. You know what? Let's be less than them. 20 other missions, right? And I might be wrong on that number, that are criminally boring. So I don't care if you nailed it at one mission when the other 20 are boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad ratio
like,
for a video game.
I don't want to devil's advocate for Destiny when I really don't care about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely, you shouldn't. Transformers Devastation is a better video game than Destiny. People don't want to hear that, but it is. It's true. Transformers Devastation happens to be a good video game.
Best thing Activision's produced all year.
Taken King is a good video game.
Allegedly, Taken King's a good video game, but you know, that's not Destiny. That's Destiny Taken King. So, yeah, that was really all I played, and now I'm 100% committed to The Witcher 3.
Yeah, how's that going?
As you should be.
Okay, so let's go a few things straight. I mostly play the game on a mouse and keyboard, because I prefer to play a lot of games on a mouse and keyboard these days, actually. Especially if it's a PC-centric game and series. I actually think The Witcher 1, for instance, has great PC controls. The combat isn't good because it's stupid. It's not because the controls are bad, right? But I was feeling a little lazy the other day, so I was like, let me move my futon a little bit closer to my PC and just put a gamepad in and play this game laying down, because I played Witcher 2 on a gamepad as well, like a little bit of it, I'm like, it's not that serious. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
First things first, egad, that fucking delay on the weapon wheel annoys me to no end.
I never noticed it.
Sometimes you're dodging, and it might just be, well, I mean, I don't know how to compare. But it might be just because, like, I initially went to a weapon wheel and I wasn't touching the weapon wheel most of the game because I'm using hotkeys.
Right.
Right.
You want to just be in the weapon you want to be in.
Yeah.
True.
So like sometimes I'm dodging. I already hit the button like a couple of times. He's not there, and that would piss me off. And then like when it finally show up, I'm like, all right, thank you. And the other thing is timeout. Is the weapon wheel not going to show up if your stamina gauge is a certain thing?
No, it should always show up.
So it should always show up. Okay. The other thing that will always drive me a little insane is that sometimes you pick a thing on the weapon wheel, and then I wasn't always sure if I technically picked it or I had to press the A button to pick it. Right?
Yeah, no, actually, that is true. I remember a few times, because, like, you use the silver sword for monsters, you use the normal sword for humans.
Right.
And sometimes I'd be fighting monsters after just fighting humans and I'd have the wrong sword out, and I would think that I had selected the back to silver sword. Mm-hmm. He would hit the first time, and then it wouldn't do dick for damage, and then he'd switch automatically. And I was like, what the hell? I pressed that before. Yeah, okay, that did happen.
Yeah, so like little things like that bother me, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, in the heat of the moment, if I ever had to do this would piss me off. And whatever, this is coming after like, what's Steam saying? 30 hours of me playing on a keyboard, right? Like, I should be annoyed on some level, right?
Probably.
So, like, part of me is a little overreacting. So I want to get this part out of the way, that if you have a working PC and you are playing this game on a gamepad, the fuck is wrong with you? You can play on a keyboard, it plays better, hotkeys are everything. Anyway, okay. First and foremost, let's talk about the combat for a second. Because I'm never going to get a proper chance to do it during the proper Witcher 3 podcast, since Matthew's going to be like, Gagan's beating that dead horse again. But let me be clear here. I'm a believer in two things. One, that we created a bunch of bullshit classics for the previous generations that aren't deserving of being called classics. I don't care how much you love John Marston, that game doesn't play well. Fuck you. Like, you're a video game. Play well. Alright?
It's fucked up, man.
Yeah, whatever. Let me be mean here. Alright? The reason why I get behind The Last of Us, I fucking like playing it. It does it on both fronts. Playing and the story. Bam. Anyway. So The Witcher 3, right? What is an incorrect opinion of The Witcher 3 is that it has poor gameplay. Let me repeat that again. If you are of the opinion that The Witcher 3 has poor gameplay, I wildly disagree with you. I don't think the combat mechanics are good. Read, mechanics are not good. But gameplay should be described to me as all the pieces coming together. The big one being, gameplay to me is effectively when I'm interacting with this game. Mm-hmm. How's the pacing? How's the level design? How's the story being told through the gameplay? How's all that stuff? And when it comes to The Witcher 3, exploring the world is part of the gameplay. Like, wanting to be in that world and exploring it and discussing things with those characters and talking to them, that's part of the enjoyment of that game. Going around, dicking around in Gwent, that's part of that world. It's entertaining as shit, right? The other thing is, when the enemy that you are presented is actually really well designed and takes advantage of the fictional beats of the Witcher universe, you actually create really interesting gameplay experiences, right? Because again, it's a great harmony of context and systems in this case. Yeah. The big one I go back to is the very beginning of the game. You're searching for Yennefer very early in the game. You're going to the Nilfgaardians, and the Nilfgaardian commander needs you to get rid of a griffin, right? You do some basic things, like you go talk to this one guy because you need this one lady because you need to find the right herb to set up a trap, and you need to go talk to this one guy because you need to go look at the dead bodies so you could properly know where specifically this griffin is, because it's left its lair apparently, right?
Okay.
So part of the game is the planning phase actually added to the experience. And unlike Assassin's Creed, The Witcher 3 does a good job. Remember the first Assassin's Creed, how you would always have to go get intel before an assassination, which is a good thing. Boring. Well, no. The idea is a good thing, right?
Oh,
the
idea
is
a
good thing. But the negative thing was, it was pretty
the
much
act
the
of
same.
Getting data.
Yeah, the act of getting data were the same exact missions over and over and over again. And first of all, getting flags around the city was stupid. Why is that even a thing that gets me intel? And it was sitting you could only do sitting on benches doing this so many times before you really should have came up with something more interesting, right? And Assassin's Creed 2 sort of fixed that, and and then whatever, that series went to shit. The Witcher 3 does a good job. Like, it has its moments where the intel is very samey, right? Go talk to dude, get item, go here, talk to someone, go find dead body, follow tracks, right? Like, it has its formulas, right? But it does, there are more than enough moments where it really mixes it up. You will probably have to pregame with the alchemy a little bit. Like, maybe buff up one of your attacks. Put a grindstone on that sword so it has a buff for a little while. What else can you really do? There's, like, little spells you can put to give Geralt, like, passive moves.
Yep.
That helps a lot to the combat. And then the big thing is, finally, when you set up a fight with the Griffin, it's not Batman combat, right? Like, it's still, whatever, light attack, heavy attack, there's a parry, but you're not parrying that thing. Not in the strictest sense, right?
Dodging.
Yeah, you're gonna dodge this thing, you're gonna use Ignian more important. It feels like a boss fight, or like a mini-boss in this game, in the case that he's gonna give you specific openings, and you're gonna take him down. People have found out that it's really easy to just crossbow the shit out of the motherfucker.
That's what I did.
But if you don't want to do that, it's actually still an enjoyable fight to do that way, right? The best sequence of The Witcher to me are like that. When there was something to the pregame, when it was really beneficial for me to do alchemy stuff, and when the actual fight asked me to do a little bit more than the bread and butter combat. Mm-hmm. That's because, like I said, the combat mechanics simply aren't good. All right.
But the systems seem to come together to
it's more like the scenarios are what the encounter design is what saves it a lot of the time. The questing is what saves the game, really, in its gameplay.
Context systems.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, like the act of hitting something with a sword in The Witcher simply does not feel good. It's just ridiculous that a game in 2015 has not nailed that by now. I'm sorry. We have too many examples of games where, like, take Legend of Zelda, for instance. That's not a good combat system, necessarily, right? Not good in the sense that it's got, like, a lot of depth to it or anything, right? Just hacking and slashing. But, like, it always felt good to hit something with a sword in Zelda. You know what I mean? Like, Nintendo nails that type of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And this game doesn't. They've improved his movement a little bit through the patches. Let me rephrase that. They've improved his movement a lot. Standard is still slower, but it's not lumbering the way it used to feel. Right. I roll with his alternative movement speed.
I do now.
Which is that he moves fast. The only problem with that is it's a bit of an I don't want to say overcorrection. It might just be that the engine the way they've made this guy, he's just not going to ever feel right. Right? Like, because there's only, they're at a point of no return with how he's going to move.
Yeah.
With certain things. So he gets strings where he feels finicky, like he's over moving in certain cases. So like, but that's fine because there's rare instances where I need to be really precise with how I'm moving in The Witcher. You know what I mean?
It's like platforming.
Yeah, right? I'd rather have him be finicky than slow and lumbering in a game where I'm going to be walking and talking a lot. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that helps to the experience. Like, they've done a lot of work there. The thing is, with the core combat, first and foremost, I think the parry isn't a particularly good defensive mechanic. For starters, I don't think its animation loop is crisp as it could be. For instance, the basic idea, it works every bit like every counter system you've ever seen in every video game, which is the enemy's going to strike, you know your tell from either it's like Batman and they have the markers around their head, right?
Yep.
Or Bayonetta, they do that glimmer thing, that little lens flare, right? Okay. In the case of Dark Souls, it's a basic animation. Like, his sword's up, you know, you got a certain frame, you can parry before you can riposte, right? Okay. That's The Witcher 3, except, you know, the mechanics, sometimes there's like this weird, I don't want to say delay, it's just awkward feeling half the time. And then, like, the counter itself isn't particularly strong. I don't think the camera is always good during multiple enemies, so this is an issue I ran into in the beginning when I was playing the game on death marches for me. I still am, but early on, when you're being attacked by, for instance, the basic ghouls and the dogs, for instance, the way the camera works is that it's sort of like got this weird angle where it's a little too close to Geralt, right? And just simply pressing on a stick, or at least on a keyboard, it doesn't really lock on in a certain way, right? Like in Bayonetta or Ninja Gaiden, you hit a button and it recenters itself, which is important in those games, right? In this, it doesn't do that. And that created annoying scenarios where he's not parrying the person I want him to parry because I couldn't see this attack coming off screen. So what I ended up doing on Death Marches for me was that I ended up playing it cheap. Like, I would back way the fuck up, find out where these guys... Like, I would find, like, there's
have them all funnel.
Yeah, I would either make them funnel or I would find out what their tether point is, which is, for instance, there were dogs right before the Nilfgaardians area in, like, this, like, weird pond lake thing.
Yep, I died there, too.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would back the fuck up, the dogs would get to a certain point, and then they would roll back, and as they're running back, I would run up to them and stab them, and I would use the protection spell to give myself a shield, and that... Again, that's not an enjoyable way to play the game. Like, it's not exciting. I don't feel tactical. I don't feel strong when I'm doing it either. So, like, little things like that hurt the mechanics. Like, there's not enough to it. In theory, you have all these options because you have all these spells. But because, for large stretches of the game, you can only really use one spell at a time, right? Like, you could either use a defensive buff, or now you can use Igni, or now you can use a telekinetic blast, or now you can use mind control and it stuns them, right?
I like mind control.
Yeah, mind control is fun. Like, traps helps, but traps are also, again, few and far between, and you're better off saving those for, like, really cool monsters.
Yeah, for the monster hunts.
And the problem is, like, for a lot of Velen, you fight humanoids.
Yep.
You fight drowners, you fight humans, and those just aren't a particularly enjoyable enemy. So there was a good stretch of The Witcher 3 where I'm like, man, I really like this world. I really like the setting. I have a love-hate relationship with Geralt of Rivia, but I'm not enjoying any time I land a quest when I have to fight something. Which is my beef with the... But, like, when you get, like, for instance... There was this random thing. You could get the quest beforehand by the apparently by the there's a like a notice board of quests you can get contracts. But I randomly was just exploring the farm area and found a ghoul in a well.
Yep, that's happened.
It's like at the very beginning of the game.
Yep.
And it was such a fucking fun thing to fight, because, like, it's a ghoul. It does different things. There's a specific point when you can attack it, because it's a ghoul. It's going to dodge your sword. You're not going to parry this shit at him. You're going to dodge a little bit more, you know?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be using your defensive spells. You should be using your offensive spells. And when you're facing ghouls later, you're going to use the right alchemy buffs. And it feels like you feel like the monster hunter that a Witcher is supposed to be in this universe.
That's something I really liked about The Witcher, is that you could find the build-up, get all the information for a monster hunter for a quest, or just stumble upon it, and then, like, retroactively find out what happened.
Yeah, like, the things that make The Witcher's gameplay sing are almost entirely how it handles context and setting, right?
Yes.
And I don't give a fuck. All it does, but at the end of the day, it makes me want to play it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, exactly.
Whereas,
which is
the
a
mechanic,
different game.
Yeah, which, there's another game where the mechanics are beautiful, right? So in theory, I should be having a time. But there's a shitload of missions in that game I don't even want to do anymore because, fuck you, I have no incentive.
Yeah.
You know, it's just less interesting. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of in my love for gameplay with that game. Witcher 3 is saying, listen, maybe our gameplay isn't the shit. Or, I'm sorry, our mechanics aren't the shit. But you're going to have a good time. And I think The Witcher 3 does a good job with it. I think, what else is a quest that I really thought was weird and how it wrapped into things? So there's this random hut in the very beginning of the game. Very beginning of the game. There's a side hut. And initially I thought the old lady outside of this house was going to be the one trying to stab me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, right? I thought she was going to kill you the way she was. No, so you go and you find out that the people she let into her house with her pan were using it. What do they use it for? Was it a spell? They were trying to get the ink.
They're trying to write a note.
Yeah, they're trying to write a note. And the guy ends up just killing the other dude, right? And I don't want to spoil what do you think we should spoil it? Or?
It's not. It's such a tiny side quest that I'm sure a lot of people will miss.
Do you want to explain it? Because I feel like you're enjoying it a lot.
No, well, I don't remember. I just remember, it was something stupid, like really dumb.
Yeah, so like when you find out later and you're thinking it's gonna be like this super grim thing, God, now I just forgot what the reason was. It's like this stupid thing's like, no, man, I really just wanted to write a note. And then Geralt's like, why'd you kill the dude? Just wouldn't let me write the note. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like the whole time you're going, like The Witcher's got this super serious tone, and then it's got this like bizarre, dry humor, right?
Oh yeah.
And you just sit back and laugh.
Yeah, no, it's so out of left field when that stuff happens, and it's great.
Yeah. I ended up killing the dude because he's fucked up for killing a dude.
Yeah.
But, it's just cool stuff like that really adds to the gameplay. That ghoul quest wraps into a different quest later. The Witcher does a quest with a tree that I'm on, and I think it's the quest Chris and Phil were gassing up earlier this year.
The best quest of the year.
Is it?
It's... Wait, sorry, this is the Bloody Baron, right?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, hands down, best quest.
Okay, so yeah, there's this one quest that's like a string of quests that can, first of all, can be started a couple different ways, from my understanding. Yep. And like when I say start a couple, there's like a main version of this quest that could start, which you would think is like clearly it's the start of something bigger. But you could start this quest off in little ways without ever touching that quest at first, and then it starts becoming this bigger thing, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And
no, when I looked up after I beat the game, all the different ways that quest can be initiated, all the different ways that it can branch out, all the different ways it can end, like that in and of itself is almost a game, that quest.
So, beautiful. As I sit here today, as I go back and forth, it's like a constant back and forth for me. I was like, is The Witcher 3 great, or is it really good?
Right? Once you hit the second and third parts of that game, you will know.
Yeah, whatever.
evil.
But like ignoring that, that's a semantics argument.
No,
Whatever.
it's not.
No, I mean it is a semantics argument of whether or not the game's really good or really good. Like who fucking cares? Like at the end of the day, I'm entertained, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the only real argument is whether a game is good or not good.
Right, yeah, that's
the only one worth having. Whether you think the game is exceptional or just good or the shit, like who fucking cares?
As long as you're having a good time.
Yeah, it's when you're not having a good time that you should be bothered. In the case of The Witcher 3, it's doing its job. And I believe that games like The Witcher 3 make a better argument that we need to be a little bit more specific with our criticism of things, and when we say things like something has poor gameplay. Because I disagree vehemently with the idea that The Witcher 3 has bad gameplay. I don't think you can... I get anyone not liking the combat. Trust me, I don't like the combat. But it's not. I don't think the gameplay is poor because I think it does. Because interacting with it is not my problem. It's dealing with its combat that's my problem. And it's specifically when it doesn't try to get imaginative with the enemies. That's my problem, right? When it's doing this other stuff, letting me interact in this world, it's an experience that a movie and a TV can't. Like I can't completely dismiss it as something. Yeah, I could just go watch Game of Thrones. I don't get to interact in that world the way I do in Geralt's world, right?
Yes.
And the writing quality between CD Projekt Red and what Bethesda and BioWare do, like no disrespect, like no disrespect intended to them, but they create a setting that becomes more plausible because of little things like, and Phil hates this in The Witcher 2, for instance. There's a lot of political talk. But I thought what he was missing was there's all this political talk that Geralt has no impact on. Like, that's what's cool about it.
A lot that goes over his head,
yeah,
too.
The war is going to come. Hell hath no fury. It is coming. You know what I'm saying? If this was a BioWare or Bethesda game, you stop the war at some point.
Right, yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? You become The Witcher 3 will end, I'm sure, and you will have no hand to play in who won this war or if the war even ends or whatever. In my opinion. Like, that's what I'm assuming is going to happen.
You're
right?
correct.
I'm correct?
Yes.
Yeah, see, and that's how it should be. Well, whatever. Spoiler alert. It's like that's
the point, yeah.
That's how it should be. Geralt feels like one man in this larger world. Like, that's what's really captivating about Game of Thrones. There's characters that play the big roles in that world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then there's also these, like, that's why we like television. You know what I mean? Like, The Wire points out that this one cop is not going to save the city. Because he's one fucking man.
Even if he stops, like, this huge drug dealer, it's not going to...
Yeah. Omar can be Batman all he wants. He's not going to save the city. And that's
what I
what's
think
beautiful about
The Witcher 3 does beautifully is that it does really establish that one man is not going to change the whole world. Mm-hmm. Yet, because it's the third in a trilogy and it's an epic trilogy, the stakes are still so high for what these characters are invested in that it feels like this monumental task. Again, most people in this universe will wake up and fall asleep and not have a single clue of anything Geralt of Rivia did. Yeah. But it's a big deal to the people in his life and to him.
Yeah, they're more personal stories, and it goes back to, like, everything I want in Mass. Like, let me be the CSEC cop. Don't let me be, you know, the...
Space Jesus.
What was he, Spectre?
Yeah.
Like when he became a Spectre, I wanted to be a cop across space. I didn't want to be the universe savior, as he said, Space Jesus, you know? And I think what's unfortunate is that Dragon Age 2 had moments like that.
Yep.
I think a lot of people would argue Dragon Age 2 is the one time BioWare got a little bit more personable with story.
It was all about the family.
Yeah, but like the gameplay became so poor that people bemoan the entire game. And if I was to argue, if we're talking just like plot concepts, I'm way more into what they were trying to do with Dragon Age 2, whether or not they hit it, than what I played of Dragon Age 1, for instance. Dragon Age 1 was save the fucking kingdom.
Yeah. No, Dragon Age 2 is, especially from the recent output, the most different, for sure.
Yeah.
It's not about saving the world, it's just about your family. I do agree that there's no real central concept to that conceit. Yeah. There's no plot.
Yeah.
So much, but I don't know, there's some cool things about it.
But like it adds, sometimes like the plot, like I want a character-driven story, not a plot-driven story. Sometimes people run into this thing like, listen, The Italian Job was a good movie, but last I checked, people love Goodfellas, and no Italian Job exists. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, stuff like that. I really think The Witcher 3 is fucking rad, and it's gonna be a hard game to disagree against for that award that we're gonna have to talk about in January.
It's gonna be a fun podcast.
Yeah, and it's not even like I still stand by like we better not be picking a game out of like just because out of spite. As long as the other guy's game isn't winning, we're picking this one because it's the most neutral we can get.
No, we won't do that.
But
although I do think if Bloodborne does end up winning, that it still deserves it.
Yeah, I don't think Bloodborne's. If I think more about it, I think Bloodborne's ranking a little bit higher. But at the end of the year, I think we had a good year. I don't think we had the great year that we were supposed to have necessarily because I compare this to 2013 in that it feels like once you get past maybe the top 7 games of the year, the rest of the year isn't as strong.
I feel like there were a lot of strong games this year.
Do you think so? Because you completely made one sound ordinary when you were talking about Ori.
And then I found like 2 or 3 others I had no idea about that were excellent.
Oh, that's true. You're right.
Like that's kind of what's...
That's my Witcher 3 check-in. Next time we get into the Witcher 3, I think I'm going to be up to Skellige. Right? Skellige is next?
Skellige,
whatever. Is it next after Velen?
Skalaga.
After Velen, have you done Novigrad?
Wait.
Have you met
I think you're right.
Triss?
Novigrad might be next. Yeah, I've met Triss. No, then I'm on Novigrad then.
Oh, you're on Novigrad. So after Novigrad's very big, depending on how much side quests you do.
I pretty much do everything. I'm not gonna lie. This Gwent thing is pretty.
I fucking sold you.
It's so fun. Okay, so first of all, it's like a dumber version of Hearthstone, right?
Yeah.
It's not even as good,
no.
But it's an interesting card game because it's like. So you're gonna have 10 cards. Oh, fuck it. We'll talk about it in a different podcast. We'll talk about the greatness that is Gwent. But it's a cool concept.
It's so fun.
But
after Novigrad is Skellige, and that'll
do it.
The second part of the game.
Yeah, that'll do it though, Chris. So now we're gonna wrap this up with One's Gotta Go, Chris.
I thought of one. So we talked about Rare Replay. We talked about some N64 classics. So I got One's Gotta Go here. Mm-hmm. We got Banjo-Kazooie. Mm-hmm. We got Super Mario 64. Mm-hmm. We got Donkey Kong Country.
Donkey Kong Country, the original Donkey Kong Country.
The original Country. I know that's not N64, but...
Right, I get what you're saying. So you can't get rid of Super Mario 64.
Not really, because Banjo wouldn't exist.
It's not just that Banjo wouldn't exist, it's modern 3D gaming changes. Like, modern 3D gaming is built on things we learned from Mario 64.
Like, maybe Super Mario 64 is the easy, safe option. But
but the other two is a little different, because Donkey Kong Country isn't anywhere near as good of a game as Banjo-Kazooie. But that also means we don't get to Donkey Kong Country 2, which is Diddy Kong's Quest. That also means Donkey Kong 64 isn't a thing. That also means... The Wii game, the Retro Studios Donkey Kong games, which are really good, don't get to exist, right? Like in theory.
We don't get Banjo-Tooie.
And we don't get Nuts and Bolts. I like that game. Donkey Kong Country is my first video game.
Those are the 3? The 3 are Mario 64, Donkey Kong Country, and Banjo?
Yeah.
Banjo.
I don't have a video game console if I don't have Donkey Kong Country.
2D platformers are better than 3D platformers.
Donkey Kong Country is not a better game than Banjo.
But the rare ones are good. I mean, the retro ones are good.
Right. They are. Fuck. So I have to pick Banjo because this game too meta for me, which is that if I don't... So... What does Gagan's gaming taste look like if Donkey Kong Country is not his first video game?
What was? Do you know what your second game was?
That was I didn't have another game for a long time. Like, I bought my Super Nintendo and played a shitload of Donkey Kong Country, and then I borrowed games from friends. Like, my next game is probably like WWF Royal Rumble.
That's such a jump.
You know, so gotta say, I'm not happy about putting Banjo-Aid. Nuts and Bolts is a cool fucking game. I think that's one of the more.
It's a cool fucking game.
Yeah, sucks. So, Ben, what did you go with?
I said Banjo's gotta go.
Banjo's gotta go. Fuck, man. What are the scumbags that are getting rid of Banjo-Kazooie?
Yeah, I'm getting
Bear and Bird. Hit the road.
Fuck you. Banjo and Kazooie are so much cooler than Donkey Kong, though.
Yeah, Banjo... Dude, Kazooie is such a bitch. She's the funniest sidekick ever. Like, there's this one point where these, like, kids are really sad because they can't find their dad because he was out looking for presents, and she basically says that he's probably dead. She's so brutal.
Oh, man. Fuck.
Great sidekick. Yeah,
I would have picked Donkey Kong if it wasn't for the fact that, you know.
I don't have that sentimental value, so yeah.
That's true. You had the benefit there. No, that was good. That was good. You know, not all of these need to be super aggressive. Sometimes just, you know, let's name some games. It's interesting. Banjo-Kazooie is such a cool game, though. So
Love it.
Viva Pinata is their best. Now, if you had made this Viva Pinata versus Donkey Kong...
Hey, we still got this one's gotta go.
We got time for the Viva Pinata discussion. Viva Pinata versus Resident Evil 4.
Oh,
Goodbye,
shit.
Resident Evil 4.
No, like all of our endless, but like the Darkness versus Viva Pinata.
Oh, fuck you.
All of our games, like our babies.
Ben will specifically wait for the podcast where it's just me and you with him again. It's his turn. He'll be like, The Darkness versus Viva Pinata. I'm like, well, Ben's no longer invited to
This
podcast.
is a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'm sorry I'm good at what I do.
You were pretty good at yours. Anyway, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. Leave us a comment in the YouTube comment section or the comment section on our forum. Check out our forum. Or send us an email at podcast@endlessbacklog.com. This is Gagan Deeps. Ugh, I completely botched my name. I went down the wrong throat.
That was Gagan Deep Sing.
Hold on.
So you alright?
Yeah, something went down the throat.
You're almost there. Just a little further.
This was episode 70. We're out.
Peace. Stay funky.